I often use the terms healing and spiritual development interchangeably. And this is something that came up a couple of times this week, which is usually the inspiration behind what I might make a little video about. And so I wanted to share this with you for you to kind of feel out your perception of your healing journey versus your spiritual development, and if and when these two things really dovetail or are actually the same thing. And so when we look at healing, sometimes there is an initial assumption that there's something to be fixed, right? Like an inherent or deep wound within us that has to heal before we can feel better, or something like this. And what we tend to find as we move closer to these wounds that are inevitable as humans, even when we have really wonderful lives, life is challenging and will land in us, especially as children, in ways that will feel like it might fracture us from ourself in some way, or leave a sense of a question mark, kind of like a open wound that says, like, what is this about? Or why do I have this kind of habitual struggle that continually shows up in my life, and things like this. Sometimes it's conditioned ways of being or thinking or perceiving ourselves or our life. And when we move closer to that, what we'll begin to notice is it's the assumption itself that says something has to be fixed that is what really needs the attention, the care. That's what heals, not because it changes, but because we allow it to become integrated back into the fundamental healed state that we're always in, that is already whole, that's already right where it needs to be, right? But if we're thinking that it has to be different or change, and we're stuck in that mindset, that's where we will just be on that wheel. We stay on the wheel of something has to change. And so we might address something and feel like satisfied by that, but then inevitably something else shows up. And this is where we begin to get more into the realm of what we could accurately call spiritual development, where it's less about this fixation on I or our psychological state, and it's a little more widened out than that, where we're noticing that we have a psychological state. We have a human conditioned way of being that tends to assume, before it's investigated, that there's things to be fixed or there's things to be figured out. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to, figure things out for a certain time or kind of stage in our healing. That can be really beneficial. And then we begin kind of opening ourselves into a place where just the noticing of these habits become a delight. And that's where the walls between self and other begin to become more transparent.